I'm feeling pretty amazing. I'm really happy to be out here in nature, happy to be out here. My name is Richard Tejeda. I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called Saved by Nature. Today, thank you for joining us for another virtual program. We're here at Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve in South San Jose, just a couple miles out of South San Jose. Actually, I grew up not too far from this area, and today's program is in partnership with Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. So we're very happy and lucky to have Terry Rogaway, their educational programs manager, with us here today, and she's running the elk cam right now. So if we see any elk out there, we'll switch to that spotting scope that we have going on. We do have a guest speaker today, and that is being Michael Hundt, who is a local, if anything, elk expert in this area, collecting data in this area. And so we're very lucky to have him today to teach us all about these beautiful, majestic elk. And again, just want to amplify how excited I am to bring this program to you. I am really passionate about our larger creatures here in Coyote Valley and in Santa Clara County. To me, the elk is just an amazing and one of our largest mammals here. If it is actually our largest mammal here in our county. And some of the sounds that you'll hear today, some of the photos that you see today, hopefully will bring you happiness in knowing that there are elk here in Santa Clara County. Terry, before I bring Mike in, did you want to say anything? Cool, come on over. I'm gonna step off screen.
I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to be working with Virtual Photo Walks and Saved by Nature, and Mr. Michael Hundt is one of our favorite elk aficionados, unofficial elk whisperer. So it's really hot out here today, but hopefully we'll be able to see some elk. Maybe they'll get a little startled by something and come out so we can see them.
Okay, I'm going to hook it to the TV.
I will turn it over to Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Richard.
Welcome.
Can you see me okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm happy to be here. This is going to be exciting today. I've been studying tule elk up on the ridge here for about 15 years. When I started walking up the hill behind the house and going up on the ridge, and here I see these tracks. I'm thinking, there's cows are loose. There's cows here somewhere. I don't know what's going on. And a week later, I see some more tracks, and they're smaller. And finally, I spotted something, and here's this big animal, and I finally figured out it's an elk. And ever since then, I've been kind of enraptured, I guess is one word. Anyway, today we're going to talk about elk. We're going to talk about, how to identify them a little bit, how to identify their track and their scat. We're going to talk about their life cycle and their daily cycle, and some history as well. So I think that's about all I have to say for an introduction.
Cool. So
I'm an open space docent. I wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
Terry said I had to say that, so I'm an open space docent.
And that's important, and that's also inspirational to people out there that are viewing today. Know that you can make a citizen science and a huge impact and difference on our community as well as well as in your own life. As far as getting out into nature and being active and educating people, it's really rewarding. So thank you for being a docent. Go ahead and show us that photo of what an elk looks like, because there's some kids watching today and they might not know what it looks like.
Bring it up close.
All right, bring it up nice and close.
Perfect. Bring it a little closer, and they'll tell you too. The moderators will tell you right there.
Cool.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is a photo of an actual tule
I
elk.
was out looking for a tule elk, actually south of here. I ended up at Pacheco State Park, and here I found some bulls laying down up on the top of the ridge, and next to the windmills actually. So they were having a nice day, and I got this picture. This is a nice bull elk. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7 by 7, we would call that. So 7 tines on each side. Would be a herd bull. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Go ahead and pull up photo 2, which is the photo of the elk distribution.
This is a picture of California, and if you see it about now, you'll see the pink areas all highlighted here. Those are where Tule elk are living, according to this California Fish and Game survey from 2016. And so how did they get there? Because they were nearly extinct about 130, 40 years ago. I want to highlight a couple of key people here. One of them being Henry Miller. We'll talk about him. Second is Walter Dow. And the third is our own native son, Henry Coletto. So going back to the early 1800s, there were about 500,000 elk that lived in California, mostly in the Central Valley, from all the way from the Transverse Mountains on the south, Mount Shasta on the north, and then from the Sierra foothills all the way to the coast. They lived along the coast near Watsonville, Santa Cruz Benches, and Salinas area. Then something happened in 1849. Gold was discovered, and thousands and thousands of miners came out in 1850 to mine for gold, and of course they needed to be fed. So there were meat hunters out shooting antelope and tule elk, and providing feed for the miners. And they continued on providing meat for restaurants in San Francisco. In 1870 or so, Henry Miller and his cowboys down in southern San Joaquin near Tupman discovered a few tule elk still left in one of their marshes. As they were draining the marshes for cattle grazing in cropland, they found some elk down there, and then they found a few more. And over the period of time, the elk grew, and pretty soon the farmers were complaining that the elk were eating all their crops, and so they decided they better move some. And so that became a 25, 30-year saga of trying to figure out how to move the elk from that area to other places in the state because they wanted to preserve them. And so they tried all kinds of methods of rounding them up and trying to fence them in and trying to tackle them and rope them and all kinds of things, but they just couldn't come up with a method. In 1920 or so, they moved about 146 elk that they captured to 19 different areas in the state. One of them being Cache Creek area, north of Clear Lake, or east of Clear Lake. And in 1921, they moved a bunch of elk, 13 elk, over to a 28-acre paddock in Yosemite Valley. And other elk went to Alum Rock Park, Balboa Park in San Diego, Detroit Zoo, Del Monte Park, and 21 more were moved to Cache Creek. In 1933, Walter Dow, a businessman and farmer and rancher from Los Angeles and Owens Valley, moved 28 elk from Tupman to Owens Valley, and a year later, they moved all those elk from Yosemite Valley to Owens Valley. And that became the source of a lot of, as that herd grew from that 55 or 60 up to 400, they had to start to move them out of Owens Valley. So that's brings us up to like 1978, when Henry Coletto convinced Hewlett Packard and the California Fish and Wildlife to move elk into the Hewlett Packard Ranch, which is right behind us here in Mount Hamilton area, and into San Antonio Valley. And over the next 4 years, 78, 79, 80, 81, they moved 65 or 70, 65 I think it was, elk into Diablo Range back here. And the elk we have that are here on Coyote Ridge actually are from that herd. They've grown and moved and migrated over here to Coyote Ridge and Coyote Valley along the freeway here. Along the way, elk were moved to a lot of different places besides that, including Point Reyes, Fort Hunter Liggett, and Camp Roberts down south.
Yeah, who's seen those before from the audience? Who's seen any of the elk herds from around this area? Like, who's been to Point Reyes? Who's seen any, at San Luis Reservoir area? Has anybody want to raise your hand, chime in, throw it in the chat, speak? That's fine. Just curious.
I've seen the herd at Point Reyes several times.
Okay. And those are Thule elk, right, Mike?
Yes, those are Thule elk. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I got really lucky the first day I went. It was a herd running along my car, and I found out later that was extremely kind of rare, and I was like just having a blast.
Yeah.
Real quick though, I want to switch to the elk cam over there, and then we're gonna move on to this to the next session here. But John, let's go ahead and just do there's the elk cam real quick. Terry's gonna just take a second right here and just show you guys around, get a little bit of close in on some of these oaks, some of these non-native grasses and things, and maybe you might spot something, maybe you might not. But it's just a cool thing to be able to have that scope out here.
Okay, so most of the time what happens is the elk like to hang out in the shade under the trees. And so when you first see them, you're like, am I seeing that or is that a rock? Oh my gosh, the rock moved. And it's kind of like that. And the only time, like the first time I saw elk on Coyote Ridge when I was working that part, it was like way far away. Like what I'm looking at right here is probably like 3 hills over. And I remember looking over and seeing something, and I'm like, what is up with that weird looking sheep? Because their rear end is like totally covered in this like, you know, downy sheep stuff. And then somebody came up next to me and they go, oh my gosh, those are elk. And I'm like, what? And then everybody ran over and was looking, and I'm like, those are dots. I see dots with some like little sheep rear ends. But the elk out here are like really, really shy because of that. And I gotta say, you know, I admit my husband was gonna tell me. I actually did eat an elk burger once at Cabela's in Reno. Oh no, dun, dun, dun. But it turns out that, you know, they taste really good, and I can totally see how that happened with the gold miners. They're like, it's a lot of meat, and they taste good. And that's not a good mixture if you're trying to survive as a species out here. So it looks like it's too hot right now. I'm sort of panning around on the hills, and like I said, this is like 2 or 3 hills over. What was that? Oh, no, that's a rock. And so you can see like some of the trails and things from the various cattle. But it looks like nobody's actually hanging out right now. It's just too hot out here. We're probably up to like 85, almost 90, I would say. You can see the heat. It makes it look all dusty. Oh, I should, I'm going to mute so that you can unmute.
Okay, I'm back.
There you
All
are.
right. Okay, you guys ready to go for a walk then?
Yeah.
Okay. So really quick before we take off though, while we're here, John, let's go ahead and play the spooked elk video from Coyote Ridge. So it says Coyote Ridge elk, January 17th, spooked. It's an MP4, 17 seconds long.
There you go, folks. They're on the move. This is what we're looking for. Back to you, Richard.
And we're walking.
Yep. California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Sure.
So this map that we're showing right now is the map of the Santa Clara County Mount Hamilton zone. I've circled in red here the Coyote Ridge area, but in the middle of the map you'll see Henry Cove. Inside is over by Highway 5. So this is the middle part of the Diablo Range that we talked about a few minutes ago. And in this range, there's anywhere from 150 to 200 elk estimated by California Fish and Wildlife.
So is it safe to say that like these elk run from like Highway 101 to like 152 to like Highway 5?
Correct.
Perfect.
Yep. That's basically it. They'll go as far north as the East Bay Parks area, and then they'll go as far as Livermore on the north.
And what stops them from crossing Highway 5 and Highway 152? And
actually, they do cross 152. I have not heard of any of them crossing 101 or 5, although I have heard a story about elk that crossed under the bridge, under 101 about 15, 20 years ago. By the golf course, and for 15 minutes or so they were being on the other side, and then they came back, and that's the only time I've heard of them being crossed the most here.
Right.
But they have crossed 152 quite often, and they've actually been hit and killed there. Something you don't want to do when you're talking about a 500-pound or more bull, or maybe a 400 cow. It's not something you want to do with your car.
Yes.
It's gonna be a mess.
Yeah, so when you're driving down 152 on your way to Los Baños, for example, if you look to your left, if you look to your right, you may get lucky, see some on your right. You may get lucky, see some on your left. Let's go ahead and pull up Q5, John, an Elk's Day, and we'll leave that up until Mike cues us to pull it down so he can talk about the cycle. I'm going to set up right here because he got some cool stuff he's going to show us.
That's image number 5, right? With all the
yeah, the Elk's Day.
Tule elk are very interesting animals. They are always doing something. They have a cycle through the day that is about a 2-hour cycle. So every 2 hours, they're switching to some other activity. Mainly, it has to do with eating. They eat for 2 hours, fill up their stomach with food, and then they go lay down for a couple of hours and chew their cud.
Sounds like my kids.
So anyway, they spend a couple hours laying there, maybe doze off for a little bit, take a nap, and then they start to get up and start eating again. And so every 2 hours, they're either eating, moving, chewing their cud, taking a nap, or in some cases, if the calves are still young and nursing, they'll be nursing their calves. But basically every 2 hours or 2.5 to 3 hours through the whole day, all through the night and all through the day. They're most active in the morning from 5 or so, this time of the year, from 4 on to 8 o'clock. By 8 o'clock or so, they're going to be bedded down someplace, taking a nap and chewing their cud. By 11:30, 12 o'clock, they're going to be up. 2 o'clock, they're going to take a nap, and so on throughout the whole day. So they don't actually sleep much. They'll lay down, and you'll see them doze off and then nod down a little bit, but they never actually lay down completely, and they never actually sleep other than those naps. So on to the next one, John. Bull elk will grow antlers just like buck deer grow antlers.
It's up now.
And the antlers are grown in the springtime. They use them for the rut through the rut part of the year, and towards the end of the year.
number 6.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
And when their testosterone levels drop off, and it gets to be December, and then into January, the levels of light start changing as we move through the January time period, and that triggers the antlers to fall off. And so then, almost immediately, the new antlers start to grow, and the antlers will grow pretty big each year, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They grow in about 4.5 to 5 months to their full size. They're actually made of bone that's surrounded with a velvet covering that contains blood vessels that move nutrients, minerals, and oxygen to the antlers. And once they're done growing, the velvet will stop. They'll dry up and then start to fall off, and they'll rub it off. And at that point in time, the elk antlers are actually almost pure white. They actually become colored and stained by the elk using them to trash on bushes and stuff like that. And
Okay, we got the development with age up picture up right now.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, yeah, it grows in about 5 months. So right now they're almost full grown at this point in time. It's the first part of June. By the end of June, they'll be full grown, and the velvet will fall off. And then in July, the last third week or fourth week of July starts the rut season. So they'll be starting to use them at that point. This particular antler, if you can see this one that I've got in my hand here, this was one that I found here on Coyote Ridge about 4 years ago.
Okay.
2015, 5 years ago already. February 20th it says. So yeah, this is from the big herd bull there up on Coyote Ridge. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 point.
How does that work, Mike? You did it really fast. There's kids watching. What did you do right now? What did you count?
I counted. This is the brow tine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are 7. These are the tines. So anything that's this like longer than 1 inch is counted as a tine. Typically, yeah, this one's going to be. Let's see. It's going to be on this side. It's going to be a left side.
Gosh, look how big that thing is.
It's going to be a left side. Other one on the right hand side. And for the Tule elk, these weigh about when they're fresh and brand new, they're going to weigh about 15 pounds. Or on a skull, the tines grow out of a pedicle which sits on top of the skull of the animal. This is actually a black-tailed deer, and the pedicle you can see here is where the antler grows out of.
You bring close in, and
so this is the pedicle where the antler grows from, right here. And I have a Tule elk one as well.
It reminds me of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Here's a Tule elk
now,
one.
check this out, kids. Check this out, because this is interesting.
This is attached to the skull. This is the break line. So when the elk sheds this antler here in February or March next year, this will break off right about there. The pedicle stays on the skull. So
that stays for its entire life.
Yeah, that's for the entire life.
And then
the antler grows from there out. So this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. So there's a couple of broken tips here.
What's going on there? Like, why is that like infused and then?
That's called palmation.
Palmation.
Yeah, it's like if you're familiar with.
We don't want to lose you.
Familiar with a moose. A moose has a fully palmated set of horns, right? Or antlers, right? So this is palmation. That's sort of on this one as well, but not so much right in here. But some develop that and some do not. Okay, you ready?
And go.
There's going to be a. So we talked about the day in the life of elk earlier, and now we're going to talk about what they do all year long. And this time of the year, it's calving season. And I've been watching one of the herds up here have since, I don't know, middle of February, I've been watching them having calves. I think there's about 7 I've counted so far. The most I've ever seen at one particular spot was 6. And then I've seen another cow with a calf a little bit farther off. Getting them all together for one photo shoot is always difficult, but it's calving season. So the young guys, little fawns are running around. They start out weighing about 18, 19, or 20 pounds when they're born, and they grow about 1 pound a day. And so they quickly grow up to be full size in about a year. And then they're in about 1.5 years or so, the cows are mature. Takes the bulls a little bit longer to mature, about 2 years, 2.5 years. And so anyway, right now is spring, February, May through May is calving season. The earliest I've ever seen a calf being born was January 30th. And the latest is about mid-June, but those are on the extreme ends. Most of the calving is done in April and early May. The bulls are off on their own, wandering around, growing antlers, as we talked about. And the cows and the calves are together. Although I have seen a few bulls mixed into the herd here and there. Generally, they're younger spike bulls that don't know that they're bulls yet. They still think their cows are part of the herd. Come the 3rd week in July, the testosterone level starts to build up in the bulls, and they become much more interested in breeding. So the rut begins around the end of July. Sometimes a nice size 6x6 or something will take over the herd and try and control the herd and manage the herd. But then in a few weeks or so, a bigger bull will show up and push them out. You can play the bugle mode, yeah, MP3, yeah, go ahead.
That one's a tenor.
That's not what I expected. Sounds like a velociraptor.
When was the last time you heard a velociraptor?
There you go.
So it's always interesting to hear the bulls. You can hear them from a mile or so off or farther. I guess maybe the elk can hear them from a lot farther away because their hearing is probably 10 times better than mine. Yeah, the third bugle in there has kind of a lower bass to start with, and sometimes they finish that bugle with a couple of big grunts, which I didn't include in here. But it's basically all.
Play it out for us, Mike. Come on.
Anyway, the bull elk is going to be advertising with the bugle and also display.
So is it true, Mike, that the one with the loudest bugle gets the women?
That's not true.
Okay.
The loudest bugle has nothing to do with it. I mean, the biggest bull in the herd is going to be the winner.
Okay.
More than likely, he's going to have the most muscle mass. He's going to be in the best shape. He's going to have a good, strong
Sense of humor.
antlers.
Oh, sorry.
And he will bugle to advertise himself to the cows to let them know that he's here and I'm the biggest, baddest dude in town. And at the same time, he's advertising to all the other bulls that says, hey, I'm in charge here. You guys go find something else to do, right?
And if they don't want any of that, then they just duke it out then?
If they feel like they can compete and battle it out, there's about a 3-stage approach, right?
Uh-huh.
There's this bugling, which says, hey, I'm the baddest dude around.
Okay.
And they'll both bugle back and forth. And as they come closer to each other and start to maybe argue about this a little bit, they don't get into it right away. What they'll often do is they'll walk parallel to each other, stand on their tippy toes, and look big. And they'll walk parallel to each other. And then maybe they'll go 100, 200 feet, and they'll turn around, face each other, and then they'll walk back. And they're just, chest out, looking big. And being macho, yeah. And at some point, one of them will say, well, this is enough of the posturing, and they will turn and charge together.
Wow.
And bang their heads, and then the battle begins. And they can push each other around. Generally, if they're evenly matched, they're going to go back and forth until it's like a draw. Or if the big herd bull is obviously much stronger, he's going to push the other one around until it kind of gives up and runs off. And so I've got video of all that stuff, and it's really exciting. It's fun stuff to watch. And the best videos I've gotten of that are from the San Luis Reserve over in Los Banos. And I invite you to go over there. They're open. Call ahead, find out if there's any elk activity. But come August or September, there's going to be elk activity over there because there's like 20 bulls in that herd, and there's going to be some serious battles going on. So I'll be there.
At the end of this show, in the slide that you put together, is San Luis in there?
Yes, they did.
So if you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, San Luis, the wildlife reserve has tule elk in an enclosure, and it's an actual auto tour. So you can stay in your vehicle and drive around this enclosure and get to see elk in there. I recommend going right at dusk because the packs of coyotes come out and they're running around in that enclosure. It's a really cool place to be at that point.
Yeah, I usually try to get there early in the morning, and then I end up staying all day anyway. So. Anyway, so this is kind of the rut. The life of a herd bull is not an easy life. He's got a herd of, let's say, 20 cows that he's actually being a sheepdog with. If you're familiar with sheepdog, the way they circle around the herd and they're kind of keeping all the cows together and all that, the herd bull is going to have to do that to keep the belligerent cows together, and until they're ready to breed. And at the same time, all these other 5 or 6 or 7 other bulls are patrolling the perimeter, waiting for their opportunity, and they're constantly kind of trying to get in, trying to steal away some cows, trying to harass the herd bull. After about a month of this, of not sleeping very much, not being able to eat, not being able to go for water, constantly patrolling and herding his cows, a month or 6 weeks into that, the herd bull is usually pretty famished and worn down. And at that point, there's an opportunity for the second bull in the herd, or even maybe the third bull in the herd, to come in and get into a battle and win, because the herd bull is just plain wore out. You know, it's not an easy life. Anyway, at the end of the rut, so in let's say October time frame, things are pretty well died down. The bulls kind of wander off. The cows kind of wander off. They splinter up into smaller and smaller groups through the winter, and then we talked about the bulls in January dropping their antlers and growing new ones. The cows are still kind of wandering around. There's really some great green grass being growing here by then because of all the rain we've had. So it's time to just eat and eat and eat, and so put on more weight and help with the growth of their calf that they're carrying, and help the bulls grow bigger and stronger. So that kind of takes us all the way around to calving time again.
Okay, cool. John, let's go ahead and pull up what's Q9. And what it is, it's the picture of the calf, the elk calf that Mike had found. And then we're going to play the bark from its mom and the squeal from the baby.
Okay, everybody get ready for ooh-ah.
You know when you got a picture up.
Picture's up.
Okay,
Aww.
Aww.
So the story here is that, and I told this to Richard the other day, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was up on the ridge and I saw this cow, and then she was just eating and hanging out and eating and hanging out. And I thought, well, that's really strange. She must have a calf around here. So I'm scoping the area. Finally, I spotted something along a fence line right underneath the fence post. And I snuck over around the ridge, came up around the backside and got up within 5 feet of this beautiful little fawn. Before I actually saw it, it was like buried in the weeds. It's like, holy cow, he was hidden away. Anyway, this little calf was laying down there. He's probably 2 weeks old, probably weighed 25 pounds or something like that. And of course, right about that time, Mom spotted me. And if we could play the barking sound of Mom coming over to say, "Get away from my calf, get away from my calf." Most people have never heard this before. So that's a cow barking. And you don't often hear when
That right there?
That was a bark.
That's a mad mama sound.
It sounds like a dog.
It's typical of them when they see something they don't recognize.
Yeah.
That they are afraid of, but they don't know what it is for sure. If I stand up on top of the hill and they know me, they'll say, "Oh, it's Mike. We'll just run away." They won't bark at me. But if I am standing there behind the camera and they don't recognize me for some reason, they will bark. And this is a typical bark. And I turned around. Here's 5 cow elks looking right at me. And I'm trying to. I don't know where they were, but they were in the mustard and the wild radish and stuff are about this tall, right? So they were buried in there somewhere. So I turned around. I walked over towards those cows a little bit to get a better picture. I turned around and here's the rest of the herd behind me. About another maybe 10 or 12 cows, 6 calves, and 5 bulls.
Wow.
And they don't like me being there. They take off, and there's a fence there. And they go through the fence. The bulls go over, the cows go through, and the calves go under. And one calf gets hung up.
No.
And so this next audio file is kind of, I compressed it a little bit because it's a couple of minutes 4 or 5 minutes long. This calf is walking back and forth, trying to find a hole in the fence. He's walking this way 100, 200 feet. He walks that way 200 feet. He cannot find a hole.
Okay. Sounds like a puppy sound.
Cool.
Hopefully that's not. Hopefully that's not too painful. So the rest of the story is Mom came back and rescued him.
Yay!
Yay for Mom. So Mom came back and rescued that little calf. He was only maybe 2 or 3 weeks old.
Got a few minutes, so let's do these tracks and scat, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Because this is important stuff. So I'm going to put this right. You can just show that right up to the camera. A little closer, right there. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a picture of 3 different animals. I compressed them all together on one little slide here to show you the difference between a cow, which we have lots of. Cows have big round tracks, maybe 4.5 inches in diameter. Next to that is going to be the Tule elk over here on the right side. And it's about 1/2 inch smaller in all dimensions. It's more oblong than round. And then out in the bottom right corner here is going to be black-tailed deer tracks, which are quite a bit smaller and much more pointed. The only one I don't have on here you might see often are pigs, which are really small, or short and blunted. But basically, those are the differences.
But it's just cool to know, when you're out in the wild and if you're in elk territory, this is good to know because, I even have these questions all the time. And sometimes if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So you'll learn this skill, and then in a few months you might forget about it. But it's really good knowledge.
The thing that's always interesting is if you're trying to prove to somebody that this is a particular size of elk track or deer track or dog track or whatever, is put some kind of recognizable thing out of your pocket. For example, I put my knife down here, my car key is here, or this is my quarterometer. So that's a quarter sitting in the cow track there. It's a great thing to pull out of your pocket and use as a reference when you're taking pictures. The next thing we're going to look at, and I think almost the last thing we're going to talk about is scat.
Yeah.
And this is Richard's favorite topic. So you want to show the picture, or should I just show the light?
You look good right there.
Okay, so there's 2 different pictures of scat here. The one in the upper left corner here is going to be the winter scat. Basically, I call it that, but it's basically a wet season scat when there's a lot of moisture in the grass in the winter time through the spring. Now that it's dry, the pellets that are in this winter scat are kind of all clumped together and stuck together because of the moisture content. In this time of the year, dry, the pellets don't stick together, and they basically are going to be falling apart. Look more like deer scat or a rabbit scat. And I have some examples of it right here.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Oop. Go.
So I did bring along some scat. So here's a chunk of scat from the middle of winter. Can you see that? Is that real? This is real.
Oh no, where my wipes?
So this is the kind of chunk together. It's actually a couple of years old. Here are some summertime scat that didn't actually clump together and stick together. This is elk scat that I found up on the ridge. The last slide. Where do you go to see elk?
Where do you go to see elk?
So you got the last one up there yet?
Let's go ahead and pull it back up. I think you had it up earlier, but we can pull it up again. Here it comes.
Got it?
And there it is. There it is. It's up.
Okay. So obviously, one of the places we find elk are right here on Coyote Ridge. And I'll let Terry talk about Coyote Ridge in a few minutes. The second most popular place that's close by, and that's I was trying to give you a reference of close by things to go see.
Here it is.
The National Wildlife Refuge over by Los Banos. Along the way,
Everybody can take a picture of that with their cell phone.
Okay.
Keep on.
Yeah.
on the way over, you're going to come by the reservoir over here, and there'll be elk near the reservoir and in the campgrounds on the other side. And Pacheco State Park, of course, we talked about. There's also elk at the Sunol Regional Wilderness here by Fremont.
I didn't know that.
In the back end, and they see them at Grant Park, Grant Ranch as well,
Really?
every once in a while. And then, of course, we talked about Point Reyes, which is, another big herd, 200 or 300 elk up at Point Reyes National Park up in Mendocino. Yeah. Yeah. So there's elk around. There's lots of places to go, and hopefully you find some and see some and enjoy taking pictures.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you
so
very much.
Terry's going to hop in here really quick. So I want to end with this message of why our open space is so important, right? So we have Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. We have open space, and this open space allows these beautiful creatures to live here. So I'm going to let Terry tell it.
Thank
So
you.
one of the best things that open space does that I really appreciate is really looking out for the resource. The resource comes first in all of our education, and we have our own team of resource management people and planners. So the exciting news is that Coyote Ridge is underway right now with the planning division to get ready to open it up. Because it has over 11 different species of endangered plants and animals, it won't be like show up and go at your own pace type thing unless you're here with staff. So we will be having more structures for you to be at places you can sit, restrooms, all that kind of stuff, and interpretive panels that'll help educate you about the amazing resource this year. And you'll be able to come out. We'll have set times and people to guide you if you like, or you will be able to walk at your own pace, but within certain time frames and things like that. So this whole thing with Coyote Valley, just down the hill from here, is really exciting because for the first time in a really long time, we're going to be able to really protect it. And I would love to get to the point where elk can actually walk from up here all the way across and get to the Santa Cruz Mountains. That would be absolutely amazing. So please keep your eyes on the website for Open Space Authority, and you can look into other programs that we'll have, especially with Richard and with virtual photo walks in the future. And pretty soon, hopefully, you'll get an opportunity to actually get to see some of these elk live.
Thank you,
Thank
Terry.
you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for joining myself and Terry and Mike.
And cool thing about it is that you can join us next Wednesday, the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that. Because me and Terry will be out here just doing a great job bringing virtual nature to you guys while you're hanging out safely at home. Hope everybody's hanging in there. Hope everybody's doing well and enjoying these virtual shows. Again, we're a nonprofit organization. We've only been a nonprofit organization for about 9 months, meaning that consider making a donation. When we're done with this, we'll edit this video and we'll send it to you so that you have your own version. And in that would be a link to make a donation or a suggestion to make a donation. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the warm weather. And remember, Santa Clara Valley, your backyard, beautiful, beautiful species here. Very important to protect the open space. And this is the reason why. Thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful day.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Hi, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you.